Hi guys, I just wanted to take the opportunity to give you a bit of a walk around my home gym, show you the equipment that I've got, let you know what I think about some of it, and leave the info box and comment section below open if you've got any queries. So let's start just inside the door here to the left. So quite obviously I've got a storage shelf, and sitting up top is an individually signed picture from Jake Nicolopoulos, previous Mr. Universe and an Australian local. Directly underneath that we've got a shelf for the DSLR, part of the trigger point therapy set, and some assorted batteries and cables. On the next shelf, and plenty more important, we've got heaps of lollies, the fuel of any gym, and then there's a picture of me and my brother-in-law Fred. Just down from that is a more visited shelf, which has got my knee sleeves, my wrist wraps up the back, and then a pair of lifting straps in the front there. Underneath is a junk shelf, so I've got some resistance bands, some shorty bands, some assorted straps and attachments for both cables and resistance bands. So below that is a wicker basket. In the wicker basket is a couple of never touched skipping ropes. So I've got a speed rope, a leather rope and a generic poly rope. And then I've got a bit of bar maintenance stuff. So some oily rags, some 3-in-1 oil, nylon brush. Then down the bottom we've got, hopefully obviously, my shoes and my wife's shoes. So up the back there we've got a set of Olympic weightlifting shoes each. So a set of Innovate Fastlift 335s, the cross trainers. Then we've got my favourite shoes in here, which are my Sabo deadlift shoes. Then I've got just a generic pair of basketball shoes so I don't have to trash my specialty shoes when I'm not doing competitive lifts. So next to the storage shelf down here is a floor-mounted party speaker, which I take outside when we have friends around or similar. And then an assortment of rarely used belts. So in the back is a belt I should probably just chuck out, which is the generic 6-inch taper, I'll say, weight belt. In front of it is a generic fabric belt from Avanti. And then I've got a leather chain dip or pull-up weight belt. Hanging off that storage basket, I've also got my chalk tub or my chalk basket. Chalk bag, I reckon it might be called. And then up top, I've got my deadlift slippers and just some assorted knickknacks in that basket there. Next to it, the good old Australian flag. Now we'll back up a bit so we can get a full view of the power rack and so I can tell you about it. So this power rack, I've had it for quite a few years now and it's done me quite well. It's a commercial muscle motion power rack and I picked it up here in Australia from Gym Direct. Now this thing's about 199 kilos. It's got some pros, got some cons. Things I like about it. So one of the things I like about it is the monkey pull-up bar up top, which is fully knurled and extremely aggressive. I like the fact that it's sturdy as anything. So at 200 kilos plus the weights hanging off the integrated plates tree, the thing doesn't move. It's great for suspended work, for all forms of internal rack work, for pull-ups, for dips, for just about anything. I quite like the integrated plate trees, but I also hate them. So they're great because it keeps all my weights nice and tidy. They're frustrating because they're not spaced for 450mm competition plates. So inside the rack, as you can see, this tends to spend a bit of time in here. This is my Muscle Motion adjustable commercial flat incline bench. And this thing's pretty sturdy. It's a bit over 30 kilos and it adjusts from 0 right up to about 85 degrees. It's got wheels and a handle to spin it around and it is micro adjustable on each of those increments. So hanging off the rack, I mentioned before that the plate storage wasn't spaced for bumper plates. I've got 300 kilos of Hillian Fitness version 1.0 Elite black bumper plates. Now, as far as I can tell, these are direct copies of the Pendlay bumper plates. They're 54mm thick for a 20 kilo plate, and I picked them up for a steal because they were clearing out the version 1 plates. 7 pairs of 20s and 1 pair of 10s. I've also got a set of 5s, 2.5s and 1.25s in the rubber tri-grip, because I didn't really feel like paying for a set of competition fractional load plates. Inside the rack I've got my junk bar, which is a Muscle Motion 20 kilo needle bearing bar. It's rated for 1500 kilos, but it's got a unwanted degree of whip, and it's bent in about 3 places. So this one lives inside the rack, and at some point will be replaced by another Australian barbell company, Powerbar. So up top on the rack, we've got on the left-hand side here an assortment of just generic Kmart or Big W resistance bands, which my wife and I use for shoulder warm-up work, so for rotator cuff or delt warm-ups. And then I've got a set of either accommodating or opposing resistance bands. So I've got a pair of reds, then I've got a single green and blue band, which we use for hip thrusts, for assisted pull-ups, for assisted dips, all that kind of stuff. Also up on top of the rack is an unbelievably cheap, and I'm talking like 40 Australian dollars, weightlifting belt. So this belt's 100mm by 10mm, so it passes most regulation standards which don't have a restriction on brands, like the IPF. Now I'm looking to replace that one with the new SPD lever belt, but unfortunately City Strength is currently out of stock in my size, so we'll have to wait until they're back in. But hopefully that one will soon be retired to the belt hook over on the other side of the storage shelving. So down in the corner here, so we've got my Ghetto As chalk bucket. So that chalk bucket is sitting atop an old clothes storage rack, and I've just screwed, it's actually a laundry powder bucket on top. But I tell you what, keeps the chalk in there and out of the rest of the gym. So that does the job for the moment. I'll eventually replace it with a stainless or closed mouth chalk bucket, but it does the job for the time being. Now down here I've got the dip attachment for the commercial power rack. So this one's a bit frustrating because it's a screw back, not a swing and drop in type like a Rogue Matador or something along those lines. But it certainly does the job, and I've had myself and probably about 60 kilos worth of weight hanging off me, and thing doesn't budge. So right next to it is my Iron Master dumbbell set. So if you've ever looked into adjustable dumbbells, you already know some of the pros and cons of Iron Master, but I plan to do a relatively thorough video review of them at some point, because I couldn't find one when I was looking. I've got the add-on kit here, which takes them up to 120 pounds, and I picked these up from Sam's Fitness. They're located in Sydney. The dumbbells are fantastic, and Sam's is great for customer service. I also have down next to it here, I picked up the kettlebell, which you can load up to about 35, gusting towards 40 kilos. My wife uses this for goblet or pole squats, and we both use it for kettlebell swings and some other GPP type work. So sitting next to the rack platform at the moment is a set of pull blocks that I built. So these pull blocks are topped with insulation rubber, 3mm rubber. They have some stopper blocks fore and aft on the platforms to stop the plates from getting away from you. And they're just over 2 inches thick each. And they're actually 2-piece with some locating nogs top and bottom. So that allows me to use one piece at 2 inches, or obviously the pair of them at 4 inches for all variety of block pulling activities. So next to it is a plyometric box, which is the standard 20-24-30 box. I picked this up from Helion when I was getting my bumper plates. Fortunately for me, they were doing a clearance. It was $50, and you know what? It is a box, and it can be jumped on. So I'm more than happy with that. Next to it there is my single deadlift jack. So for those of you who've ever seen one before, they're pretty basic, quite simple. I'd love to have the space and to be able to tolerate occupying space in the gym here, a 2-prong deadlift jack. But for the time being, this one does the job, and it's certainly a lot easier when you're deadlifting 200 plus kilos than trying to yank bumper plates on. Now we've just seen in the middle of the gym here, I've got my deadlift platform. So for those who are interested, I built this deadlift platform out of 2 laminated layers of 12mm CD ply. Essentially, I had another sheet of CD ply, which I cut down to 1200 by 1200 and wrapped in exterior grade carpet. And then I topped either side with 2 600 by 600 rubber mats. So you can see each side there for a total of 4 rubber mats. At some point, I'll wrap this platform in a bit of about 40 by 40 by 1.6mm steel angle, but for the time being, it just sits there open. Now, moving around still, we've got the adjustable, sorry, not the adjustable, we've got the dumbbell rack from NC Fitness Gear, and this goes from 1 to 10 kilos on either side of the rack, obviously, and then from 12.5 to 25 kilos in 2.5 kilo increments for a total, I think, 16 dumbbells and 1 to 25 kilos range. I picked those up relatively recently to allow me to leave my Iron Masters set up at 26 kilos or greater. So these ones are typically just used for heavy shoulder pressing or all sorts of, all varieties of bench and pull work at the moment, which is good because while the Iron Masters are fantastic, they're probably a minute plus to change and you just get lazy. Now over in the corner is one of my least used bits of equipment, which is a commercial treadmill which I picked up from a lady who thought it was broken. But fortunately for me, for $100, I picked up a treadmill which goes up to, I think, about 8 to 10 degrees worth of incline and 20 kilometers per hour. It did have a heart rate monitor in there, which was a piece of garbage, so I disconnected it. Now next to the treadmill, I've got my high-low cable tower. Now sorry about the auto lighting here. I've got a bit of sun coming in the window and it's not really helping things out. So I picked this up when I got my power rack, and the reason I got it predominantly was because it came with an extra 100 kilos worth of weight, and it was about $600 for the weight and the high-low tower. There's a few things I don't like about it, but it works quite well and it gives me a lot of versatility in here. Predominantly my wife uses it now, I don't use it a whole lot. Now as you can see, I've got the wide grip pull down handle there up top, and then down the bottom here I've got an assortment of handles as well as my ab slings that never get used sitting in the corner. So again, let's have a look and see if we can get the camera to handle the difference in light. It doesn't look like it's enjoying it, but there we go. So here on the plate storage tree, I've got a pair each of 20s, 10s, 5s, 2.5s, 1.25s, and then a set of fractional plates just at the top on the other side there. I've got a Olympic Easy Bar, and then I've got a 1.8 meter generic needle bar sitting on the side there with a set of lockjaw collars. Hiding behind it, neither of these two things get a lot of stage play, but we've got a generic yoga mat, and then we've got a squat bar pad or a barbell pad in the back there. The barbell pad's only used for glute ham raises because I hate using them for squatting, and I much prefer to squat with just a barbell. After all, that's why traps were invented. So next to it there, we've got an ab bench, which I picked up for free. Again, that doesn't get a lot of use, tends to just sit there. Now in the corner is one of the newer additions to the gym, which is a local made glute ham raise. If it's not blatantly obvious, this is a bit of a rip-off of the Rogue Abrams 2 glute ham raise. I picked this up for about $600, and the Rogue Abrams has recently gone up in price here in Australia to $1,600. So it was a bit of a no-brainer as to which one I was going to get. Now I've got another bench here. This one's great because it's nice and light. I only got it yesterday from Sweat Central, but unfortunately there's some issue with the attaching hardware, so I'm yet to actually give that one a go. The base is quite sturdy, the pad feels nice and thick, relatively grippy, but we'll have to wait and see. Now rounding it out, we've got our scales, we've got a form stick or a stretching rod, and then we've got the generic planning board, whiteboard sitting in the corner there. Now I only just realised that when we were in here before and I was looking at the platform, I didn't actually talk about my power bar here. So this power bar is an Australian made power bar from Australian Barbell Company. It's a 28.5mm diameter bar, which falls in line with IPF standards, and it's essentially an Australian made Alico copy. So I opted for the version which was black nitride with stainless sleeves. It's a fantastic barbell, and for less than a third of the price here in Australia anyway of an Alico, it's a great alternative option. Now, as I said at the start of the video, if you've got any questions, queries, or want to comment, feel free to do so in the comments section below. Otherwise, I'll put my email in the info box if you want any further information. Thanks.